Sorry about that. That video got cut off in the middle after just 2 minutes. So like I said, we're going to reorganize this here, and you see very clearly there's the period in which Yocheved is the heroine, Moshe's mother, and then the period in which Bat Paro is the heroine, and then finally we have Miriam taking the lead. Again, Miriam, like Yocheved, does not have a name, simply his sister. She comes up with this brilliant idea that she can find a Hebrew woman to nurse Moshe, who of course will end up being Moshe's mother. And then in Pasuk Tet, we discussed in class if we should call this a separate unit or see it as a continuation of that, where the various heroines come together. Right? Bat Paro sends Miriam to bring a woman who ends up being Yocheved, and so then Yocheved nurses Moshe until he's old enough to be weaned and returns him to Bat Paro. So in these last couple of psukim, all the heroines come together. We noted an interesting literary tool that the Torah uses in order to bring all these women together. We're told over here, "Vatera oto ki tovu," right? That she saw something about Moshe that was special, and based on that, she took action. "Vatikach lo tevat gome." Now we've seen that was Michal in the background. We've seen that word lakach before because this parsha began with a man taking action. This is really what we'd expect. One could even argue that this should be, kind of separated from the beginning of what the different heroines are doing, and that over here, this first pasuk is what you expect to see in a biblical story. In those days, the men are the active characters typically. So someone comes and literally takes a wife. That's simply a way of saying that he married her. And then after that, suddenly we see this shift where it becomes all about the female heroines. So she sees the special situation of this kid who's Tov, who's somehow complete or good or healthy, radiant, depending on which interpretation you go by, but his life's in danger, and she decides to, she decides to take action to save it. And following that lead, we're then told that Bat Paro goes to bathe, Vatera tateva betoch hasuf. She sees a basket in the reeds. Based on that, she sends Amata, which we're going to translate from her maidservant, Vatikacheha. She takes it. And as we continue, we notice a similar thing, although over here it's Yocheved seeing and taking action. Here it's Bat Paro seeing and taking action. But then one last time we have the same pattern of verbs. Vatiftach, vatir'ehu et hayeled. Again, there's seeing, although again it's Bat Paro seeing. She sees him. She sees the baby. And then when the sister Miriam speaks up and says, "Should I get you a woman to nurse the kid?" Bat Paro tells her to do it. They call the mother. And finally over here, Vatikacha isha hayeled vatinikehu. Finally, Moshe's mother, who began this whole drama by taking a tevat gome, taking this basket to save her baby, she again takes her baby back and nurses him until he's big enough that he can be given over to Bat Paro. And so the simple pshat level of the story, we tried to show how there's this sort of repetitive structure by the Torah repeating the same couple of verbs again and again of this one and that one, seeing and taking action, and conveying the idea that these three heroines, one by one, and ultimately, coming together in these last couple of psukim, end up taking this baby who would have been killed under the decree of Paro, and instead not only rescuing him, but actually, raising him in the king's palace. He ends up being raised for success. One further thing that we discussed a little bit, where there's no right or wrong answer, just interesting to ponder, is the question of can we rank these heroines? Among these three heroines, is Yocheved or Miriam or Bat Paro, is one of them greater than another one? And we made the following observation. If you look in the psukim here, talking about Bat Paro's primary role in saving Moshe, you could argue that she had the least to lose here, in a certain sense, right? She's a princess. Um, and so in that sense, she's not really taking the same level of risk that everyone else is taking, right? Like, Yocheved, Miriam, in theory, they can get in real trouble. They can get punished by the king if they got caught for violating his decree, whereas it's hard to imagine that Paro would have really harmed his own daughter. And so you might say, not only that, but at least initially, she doesn't put in so much effort, right? Yocheved has to do this whole thing of getting this basket and coating it in a way that it'll float, and coming up with a plan to hide Miriam near it. Miriam, who was probably pretty young at this point, has to act mature beyond her years. But about Paro, what she did was really not all that risky to her. She has a staff to help her. She has her Na'arot, she has her Amma. And so in that sense, he might very much downplay her role compared to what Yocheved and Miriam did. On the other hand, he said, if you think about which person here most defied what you'd expect of her, I think we look at things differently from that perspective. Right? I mean, of these characters, Yocheved does a lot, but it's also her baby. I mean, any mother who has a baby whose life is at risk may need to do a lot to try and save her baby, whatever the risk is. But pretty much any normal mother will do it, whether it's a health risk where she has to take her baby from doctor to doctor, or a physical danger she has to protect her kid from. What mother wouldn't go to all kinds of lengths in order to save her baby? So yes, Yocheved does some remarkable things here, but one could argue that the things Yocheved does are basically just a mom being a mom. With Miriam, it's a bit more impressive because we know she was quite young in the story. Nevertheless, one could make the same point basically about Miriam, that the idea that she would agree to be, stationed a little bit far away looking out for her brother, that's not so impressive per se about Miriam, right? Like, again, older sibling with a baby brother at risk, normally the way of the world is that older sibling is going to try to help save their younger sibling. In Miriam's case, what she does is slightly more impressive if we consider the fact that she has to really think on her feet here, right? She doesn't just do physical actions that would be expected to save her baby, right? If she saw her baby brother stuck in the water and picked him up, so fine. What older sister wouldn't do that? But she has to really think on her feet here. In class, I gave that example of how people who serve in the Mossad or similar agencies will always talk about being in these situations where in order to not blow their cover, they have to come up with a story that's so compelling that not only will it explain why they're in some strange place in a strange situation, but it'll sound so compelling or so scary or so something that people who might be able to catch them won't even want to investigate because they'll think the story sounds so convincing or they're so scared to mess with this person based on what the person said. So Miriam also here, she has to really think quickly on her feet and give this very convincing story where she doesn't say, I'm going to call the kid's mother. That maybe that could lead to problems if she gave away the fact that the mother had put the baby here on purpose. Instead, she just says, do you want a meneket, mina ivriot? Do you want a Hebrew woman who could nurse your kid? And it makes sense if you have Hebrew women who are having babies, but their own babies are taken away. There might be some woman out there who has milk, but no baby to feed. And in general, if the Hebrews were the slaves, it makes sense that this is a way that could be seen as part of the enslavement, that some Hebrew woman is going to have to serve the daughter of the Pharaoh by nursing her baby. And so Miriam presents this in a way that sounds very appealing to Bat Paro without giving away the fact that she and her mom basically orchestrated this. And if we're then going up in order of impressiveness, so let's look at Paro the other way here. On the one hand, it's true she's not risking her life, but she didn't have to do anything here. And I think there's significance to the fact that two of the seeings are done by her. The first time that it says Vateret HaTeva literally means she saw. The physical act of seeing with your eyes. But Ra'ah can also mean more broadly to realize, to recognize. I mean, when it says here that Yocheved saw Moshe was good, it's not just that she saw him with her eyes. she somehow recognized or realized there was something special about Moshe. And here as well, when we're told that Bat Paro sees Moshe physically, and then we're further told Vatiftach Vatir'ehu et Hayeled, that seems redundant. Like, what else did she see? But you realize this isn't just sight over here. Right? I mean, yes, she sees a kid there and realizes that it's a Hebrew kid, but somehow she recognizes something about this kid. She connects with this kid, right? Because we're told about Tachmol, she feels compassion for him. And this second Re'iyah is really a new stage in Bat Paro's development, which is a direct result of the first stage. So to begin with, Bat Paro could have just turned a blind eye to what happened over here, but she didn't. She saw there was a teva there, and she decided to take some action. She literally saw and took action. But then, based on the fact that she didn't ignore the teva, she goes this extra step where she actually sort of connects with the baby, feels compassion for the baby. The second Re'iyah is more than just the physical act of seeing with the two eyes. And this makes her impressive because she had both these steps. Right? She could have initially kind of looked the other way, pretended not to see the teva at all. And in that way, her father's decree would have been upheld without her having to kill the baby. So again, let's assume she's a decent enough person. She didn't want to kill the baby herself with her own bare hands. All she had to do was look the other way instead of looking at the teva, and pretend to look the other way, and on its own, nature would have taken its course and killed Moshe, and she would not have in any way violated her father's ban. Instead, when she sees the teva there, rather than trying to look the other way and pretend not to see it, she dafka sends a messenger to bring it to her. But even then, she could have said, okay, now that I see what's inside, and I see that it's Miyaldei HaIvrim, and I know that my father said the Yaldei Ivrim have to die, maybe now I'll kill the baby. And on the contrary, right, as she realizes it's a Jewish baby, she's feeling compassion for it. And at the end of the day, even moving forward, she has to be on board with this plan, right? She has to be okay with bringing a Hebrew woman into her home. And as the kid gets bigger and Moshe is brought to Bat Paro, she could have made a conscious effort to do everything she could to indoctrinate him that he's not really Jewish. Right? Someone pointed out in class, he has a bris, and he may have some memories of things his biological mother said to him while she was nursing him about his Jewish identity. But how long did a kid nurse for in those days? Till he was 2. Maybe in this case, Yocheved tried to drag it on till he was 3. Right? Bat Paro has a lot of opportunity in this kid's formative years to indoctrinate him that he's an Egyptian prince, and he should forget anything about his Jewishness. She could have made up some crazy story of why else he might have had a bris. On the contrary, it seems to be that Bat Paro is fine with this story, fine with Moshe having this identity rooted in the fact that he really is a Hebrew, so much so that when she names him based on the fact that she brought him in from the water. So she's naming him based on the fact that she saved him from drowning in the water under her father's decree. And so, in that sense, even though Bat Paro may have taken the least risk because she's unlikely to be punished the way a Hebrew woman would have been punished, but she's also the one who did the most to step up on behalf of a baby whom she easily could have ignored. She easily could have left him for dead without killing him herself. On the contrary, she not only brings him into her home, but enables him and supports him continuing to have this Hebrew identity, naming him after the fact that he was drawn from the water, rather than trying to suppress that identity and raise him as a true Egyptian.